In every war, there are weapons we expect to decide the future. Tanks, giant warships, long-range bombers. But in World War II, one of the most decisive shifts in power came not from something massive, loud, or even visible. It came from a trap, a silent, precise, almost unimpressive device that operated beneath the waves. A trap designed to hunt one target, the German U-boat. This trap, called Hedgehog, became one of the unsung inventions that helped the Ally break Hitler's naval supremacy in the Atlantic. And without it, the outcome of World War II could have looked very different. Most people never hear its name, but today we go into the shadows of the Battle of the Atlantic and uncover the trap that quietly changed the world. The deadliest threat in WW2 wasn't where most people looked. When people think of Hitler's most powerful weapons, they imagine Tiger tanks, Stuka dive bombers, or V-2 rockets. But during the early years of World War II, none of these threatened the survival of Britain, and by extension, the entire Allied war effort, the way German U-boats did. The Battle of the Atlantic was not glamorous, it was not televised. There were no dramatic frontline photos. It happened in cold darkness, far from cities and armies. Yet it became the longest continuous battle of World War II, lasting from 1939 to 1945. In those first years, the Allies came dangerously close to collapse. German U-boats executed wolfpack tactics, multiple submarines coordinating to ambush large convoys at night. The results were devastating. At one point in 1942, Allied shipping losses reached 700,000 tons per month. Sometimes one out of every 4 ships leaving the American coast never arrived. In a single month, U-boats sank more tonnage than the Allies could build. Churchill later admitted, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." It wasn't a battlefield problem. It was a starvation problem. If Germany controlled the Atlantic, Britain would collapse. If Britain collapsed, America would stand alone. If America stood alone, the war would spiral into a nightmare with no second front. Everything depended on breaking the U-boats. But the Allies lacked one thing, a trap with absolute certainty. Why traditional weapons failed, and the ocean favored the hunter. Before the Hedgehog trap appeared, destroyers relied on depth charges. These were powerful underwater bombs set to explode at chosen depths. But there were 3 fatal flaws. Flaw 1, depth charges depended on guessing. Submarines move. Slowly, yes, but at depths, even 10 to 20 seconds can mean the difference between survival and destruction. Destroyer crews dropped charges where they thought the submarine might be, not where it actually was. Flaw 2, the explosion blinded sonar. As soon as depth charges detonated, sonar contact was lost, leaving the ship hunting a ghost in the dark. Flaw 3, a near miss often did nothing. A submarine could survive explosions even within 20 to 30 feet. Unless a charge detonated right next to the hull, the shockwave wasn't enough. This is why early in the war, only about 1 in 20 depth charge attacks resulted in a confirmed kill. The U-boats weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The Allies needed something entirely different, something accurate, instantaneous, and deadly. They needed a trap. The birth of Hedgehog, the ocean's first true trap weapon. In 1941 to 42, American and British engineers proposed a revolutionary idea. A weapon that didn't rely on guesswork. A weapon that worked with sonar, not against it. A trap that didn't explode unless it hit something. This was Hedgehog, named because its cluster of protruding projectiles resembled a spiky animal curled defensively. What made it unique? 1. It fired forward, not behind. This meant the ship didn't lose sonar contact. 2. It released 24 to 48 contact bombs in a tight pattern. The submarine had nowhere to run. 3. The bombs exploded only on impact. So there were only 2 results. A massive underwater blast, submarine destroyed silence, attack again immediately. This changed everything. One U.S. Navy officer described Hedgehog as the first weapon that made us feel like hunters instead of bait. Early test, the moment commanders realized they finally had a chance. Early tests shocked the Navy. Destroyers went from hoping depth charges might connect to calmly launching Hedgehog volleys with sonar-guided precision. A few facts from naval test evaluations. Hedgehog allowed a ship to maintain sonar lock for the entire attack. Submarines hit by Hedgehog were destroyed 91% of the time, compared to depth charges approximately 7%. Operators needed less training to use it effectively. The U-boat force had no counter. Their greatest strength, stealth, had been turned against them. A weapon that does nothing unless it hits is terrifying to the one being hunted. Why this trap was feared even more than depth charges? Former U-boat crew diaries reveal how Hedgehog attacks felt from the inside. One German sailor wrote, "We heard nothing at first, and then the boat shook like the sea had broken open." Because the Hedgehog trap created no depth explosions, submariners often had no warning. Sometimes they didn't even hear the bombs enter the water. Then, impact. A single puncture could flood a compartment in seconds. Another captain wrote, "The silence before impact was worse than the depth charges. Fear is a weapon, and fear was something the trap delivered with horrifying consistency." The game changer. How the trap turned the Atlantic. By 1943, the U-boats were losing the one advantage they had, invisibility. Here's what changed. American destroyer escorts were mass-produced shipyards launched one every few weeks, each fitted with Hedgehog. Escort carriers began covering supply convoys' air reconnaissance paired perfectly with Hedgehog ships. New sonar systems, HF/DF, improved ASDIC, fed perfect coordinates. Hedgehog didn't guess. It executed. The impact was dramatic. In early 1943 alone, Germany lost over 40 U-boats in a single month, more than they could replace. By mid-1943, Admiral Dönitz withdrew most U-boats from the Atlantic, admitting losses had become unacceptable. Allied shipping losses dropped sharply, ensuring a stable supply line for Europe. Hedgehog wasn't the only factor. Radar, cryptography, aircraft, and escorts all helped. But Hedgehog was the kill mechanism, the finishing move, the trap that made surviving U-boats rare. America's role and how this trap helped win Europe back. American involvement accelerated the shift dramatically. Between 1943 and 1945, the U.S. produced over 500 destroyer escorts, nearly all with Hedgehog installed. These ships formed the backbone of the Mid-Atlantic Escort Gap, a region previously deadly for convoys. Supply lines began flowing at unprecedented levels. Those supplies built up the forces necessary for Sicily, Italy, the air campaign over Germany, and ultimately, D-Day. Without secure shipping, none of these operations could have happened. No fuel, no tanks, no ammunition, no food, no medicine, no troops. The U-boat trap was not just naval warfare. It was the gateway to Europe. Little-known facts that make this trap even more incredible. Here are a few rare facts most people never hear. 1. Hedgehog required almost no maintenance. Simple slingshot-like launchers made it reliable in brutal sea conditions. 2. The Allies sometimes recovered intact Hedgehog bombs on the ocean floor. They were incredibly stable unless they struck metal. 3. German intelligence underestimated it for months. Nazi reports described it as light artillery and harmless, until U-boats started disappearing without distress calls. 4. Hedgehog's successor, Squid, became even deadlier, but Hedgehog paved the way, breaking the enemy's confidence. 5. Many Hedgehog ships never lost a single vessel in their convoy. Their kill ratio was that effective. 6. Hedgehog became the first anti-submarine weapon used globally after World War II. Its influence shaped naval doctrines for decades. 7. Submarine captains feared silence more than explosions. Depth charges could be outrun or outmaneuvered. Hedgehog could not. These details elevate Hedgehog from a mere device to a psychological weapon that shifted the balance of the entire Atlantic. The human side, fear, hope, and the sound of change. It's easy to talk about traps in technical terms, but wars are fought by people. For Allied sailors, the arrival of Hedgehog meant fewer panic nights, fewer screams over the radio, fewer convoys burning under moonlight, a sense that they could finally fight back. For German crews, missions felt cursed. Survival odds dropped sharply. Morale sank. Many believed they were being hunted by invisible weapons. WW2 is filled with loud stories. Hedgehog is a quiet one, but sometimes the quietest trap leaves the deepest mark. Conclusion: the trap that made victory possible. In the end, the Hedgehog trap didn't just sink submarines. It rescued nations. It protected thousands of ships, millions of tons of supplies, and the very lifeline of the Allied war effort. It allowed America's industrial power to reach Europe. It ensured Britain survived the darkest years, and it helped pave the road that led from the beaches of Normandy to the heart of Berlin. Its impact was enormous. Its story is almost forgotten. But in the grand puzzle of World War II, Hedgehog was the quiet piece that made the picture complete. Subscribe for more hidden World War II weapons and untold battlefield stories.